So today we're going to run through P6-Calculator. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. And I've used P6-Calculator with lots and lots of clients. So I'm going to run through some of the scenarios that we've deployed it with various clients, but there's so many little things that you can do with P6-Calculator. I'm sure I won't cover all of them. So it's very much a food for thought webinar. So let's touch on some of the common struggles that you might be facing yourselves when you're working in P6. So, with P6, you can do scheduling, so dates, you can do resourcing, you can do costing. But often that data, you might want to do other sort of side type things, So I've got some clients who wanted to do working interest, so splitting a project because they had more than one joint venture, so they wanted different percentages split out on the costs. So instead of doing all that in Excel, we were able to use Calculator to do that all in P6. Or resources, so they wanted to split the resources with different currencies. That's another one. So not something you can do out of the box. So basically what we're trying to do is leverage the existing data sitting inside P6, but give you other pieces that you can't necessarily get out of the box. That's really the best way that I would say to explain P6-Calculator. So I'm going to ask a quick question. So it's pretty hard to come up with some questions that work across the board. But the first one I'm kind of curious is your P6 integrated? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is when you're integrated, you're usually getting various pieces of data from other systems. So that really opens up the floodgates as to what you might want to see inside of P6 when you start integrating it. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and vote, you can. If you don't, that's okay too. And I'll just keep moving and share the results. Okay, so it looks like the people who were interested in responding aren't integrated. Okay, that's fine. Now we do integration, so that's partly why I'm always curious. It's becoming more and more important to automate and integrate so that we do away with extra data entry, and that's another key thing that I would say P6-Calculator lets you do. Okay, so we can automate a variety of things. So some of our clients had codes that were mandatory, but we don't really have mandatory code as a real concept in P6. So that's another thing that we were able to deal with. But not only that, sometimes they wanted to protect that code. So it's also not easy. Something easy to do in P6 is to protect a field. Because if you give someone access to it, then they could delete it just as much as they could add something into it. Okay, so that can be a challenge. So that's another sort of thing that P6-Calculator could help you with. It could automate making sure that people can't update something or edit something. So the consistency that sometimes is a struggle with P6, you can improve on. So another thing I'm going to show you are a bunch of little utilities. So archiving, loop detection at the project level. So you don't have to open it up to see that there could be a loop in there. Counting things. So counting number of work orders or counting full-time equivalents off of resources and having that done properly instead of just using a flat factor. So I'm going to show you a few of these that make administering P6 easier. Okay, so you don't have to run a bunch of global changes. You don't have to make sure people are running the global changes. This is going to automate some of that. Project development. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, it was a drilling client who had some of the different wells. They had different partners involved in the wells, and they had what they called working interest that they wanted to see. So it's basically a percentage of certain parts of the project. They wanted to know what their costs were. Okay, so we automated that so they knew their cash flow. So we had the actual the actual costs coming in, and we automated what the work in interest percentage was. So if it was 30% of 100,000, it showed it as its own field that rolled up so they could see that value. Okay, so there's all sorts of little things that you can do, especially piggybacking on data from other systems. So another example that I'll touch on is a client who loaded their estimates right down to the activities and expenses and resources. Those estimates were in a certain currency, and they needed to be able to see those values in different currencies. Okay, so I'm going to show you how, if you've got certain things integrated, things that you didn't think you would ever be able to do in P6, you might be able to look at now. Okay, so some people might say, I don't have time to deal with costs. Well, if you're integrating it off of another system, you can pull those values in. We can do all sorts of calculations if need be. And then you have it in P6. So now it's not really adding a big burden on your P6 folks. In fact, it might be removing some burdens if it's integrated. And then you've got better value in the data you've got in P6. And of course, you can piggyback reporting onto that. Okay, so those are all the sorts of things that P6-Calculator kind of opens up the floodgates of additional things that you can do inside of P6. Right, so let's ask the next question, because this one's probably going to get a bit more traction. So how do you use P6? Do you use it just for scheduling? Do you also use resources, and or do you use costs? So I know a few years ago, Oracle did a survey, and 100% of the users of P6 used it for scheduling. Not surprising. About 60 to 70, I think, was the range where that used it for schedule and cost. And at the time, 30 to 40% were also using costs, okay? Not just schedule and resource, all three of the facets, schedule, resource, and costs. So it's always interesting to see kind of what people are doing, and we've got a mixed bag of answers, which is not surprising. So if you're doing resourcing and costs, there's a lot of interesting things that I think I'll show you a few things that will maybe pique some interest. And again, you got to look at this as a food for thought webinar, because I'm not, in the time that we've got, I can't show you all the different things that we've ever done with Calculator, but I'll give you enough of ideas. And if you know there's things that you just couldn't get P6 to do, this could be something that could springboard into something that could help your team. So updating is another thing that we found Calculator can really be good for, because you get some values in, and then again, we can do calculations. So we had some groups that wanted to understand their overhead, their profit off of the basic costs incurred. So we calculated those things automatically off percentages, and the percentages were not the same on all the activities. Okay, so that's another thing that you could do. So again, it can give you your forecasting very, very quickly. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the idea is to get that data now in a nice, usable format out to the extended team. And what we usually do there is we usually use our P6 reporter, which includes our data warehouse and a bunch of our pre-built queries that include data that are in the resource, time-based resource and expense spreads. So now you can get that data out in a much more usable fashion using P6 as your hub. Okay, so I'll just touch on those things. I won't show you the reporting piece. If you're interested in anything like that, definitely join our P6 Reporter webinar. And we've got those sprinkled through the calendar. So you can sign up for one if you want to understand the kind of outputs that you can get once you do this sort of calculator work. So the benefits are very extensive. As I mentioned, I think there's just about every one of my large clients that I work with has P6-Calculator, and it saves them tons of time. And it could be half an hour a day, up to hours and hours a day, just depending on how large the group is. But we've been able to automate so many little things for them with this tool. So let me explain how it works, and then I'll jump in and show you some examples. So essentially what we do is we identify what we want to calculate. And calculations can be flagging. They can be calculations, so using either percentages or using costs, that sort of thing. So we identify what we want to look at, what fields we want to look at, and how we're going to do it. We could then automate that calculation, if you will. Or it could be something that makes more sense for a person to run. But most of our clients, they're automated things that run. Then we can do a variety of things with that. We can roll things up, roll things down. So those are automations we've got inside the calculator, which will just make it much easier for you to see the data. So sometimes seeing the data up at the project level is going to make that very usable, so you don't have to open and dig inside of multiple projects. It also might make reporting out to a senior manager or general manager much easier if we have it at the upper level. Okay, so when I talk about roll-ups and roll-downs, we're talking about all those layers in P6. So we're talking about project, WBS, activities, and then from activities, we've got resources and expenses. So all those different layers we've got interactions inside of there that can be automated very easily just by certain naming conventions. Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples. And again, don't think of this as this is all that calculator does. This is just a few examples I'm going to run through today. And if there's things you know you've been trying to do, but it's you haven't got there yet, definitely throw some ideas at me in the questions, and we can just run through some ideas. Okay, so I'm going to switch to P6 so I can actually show you in action. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't bump my resolution up. I think I'm going to bump it up one level, just so that it's easier for you all to see it, because it may be a bit small for some of you. So let me just bump it up 1%, see how that looks, and then I'll pop P6 open. Okay, that's a bit bigger, so let's see. Hopefully everyone can see it, and it's legible, hopefully. Okay, so let's run through some different ideas, different scenarios. I'll touch on some that I may not show, just again for the sake of time. And we can start with that. So I'm going to start with an archiving example. So we've got different archiving that we've deployed for clients, archiving projects automatically, archiving activities and WBS levels automatically. Now this works really well for any groups that are typically doing turnarounds, doing maintenance, operational maintenance, that sort of thing. That tends to be the kind of clients that need some automatic archiving so that their database doesn't get fully cluttered up day over day, month over month, with more and more and more work orders coming into the system. So let me give you an example of a strategy that we took with one of our clients. And I'm going to go for the example of removing activities, okay? Now, as I mentioned, we have archiving of projects that take place automatically, WBSs and activities. We also have archiving that pushes projects automatically to other databases. Okay, so those are all the scenarios we have done, but I'll just run through one example here. So I'm going to use this project here, and I'll go ahead and open it up. So archiving usually will take place based on some sort of criteria that you've defined. So let's go ahead and open up a layout. So it can come in many flavors. I'm going to do a simple example because it's a demo. It's just going to be a very simple example that we're going to run through. So we're going to have a bunch of activities. Actually, I think I better open a different one. I think it actually archived it, so I'm going to open a new one. So let me just make sure. Oh, okay, that's not any different. Okay, so let's run through an example. So I've got three activities here, and what we want to do is we want to tell P6-Calculator that I want to archive based on some criteria. So your criteria could be an actual start, an actual finish, if it's in a certain date range, let's say 30 days after that, you can archive it. That could be one example. Or it could be a combination of a code. And in this case, the code is closed, usually closed, which would usually match your EAM system, so SAP or Maximo, JD Edwards, etc. Usually you would not want something out of P6 unless it hit a certain status, okay? So it could be canceled, you might want it removed, approved, so on, okay? So typically closed means all charges have gone through the system, and also the activity is finished, okay? So the idea here is based on some criteria that we would define, we put into the calculator, and it gets deployed, then you can go ahead and run this. Now, we usually use some sort of value to allow the P6 folks to control the automation as much as possible. So in this example, we usually use some sort of timeline. So as soon as we receive a closed status, within 30 days, you can go ahead and you can archive it. Okay, so something like that is typically what most of our clients want. So you can see here, I've run the archive on some of these projects. That's why there were so few activities. I think I already ran it for a test. But the idea here is we give it a criteria. We monitor certain fields. In this case, we're monitoring the status. And then we tell it to go ahead and run. So the archiving is typically run, it could be run once a day, because it's not something you need to have happen immediately usually. Since I'm doing a demo live, I want it to show us which ones are going to be deleted. So you can see here it's letting me know with a message. So that's another key thing that we usually do. So we make sure there's a message so the P6 folks are not caught off guard and they can dig in to see what's going to happen in advance. Okay, this is not something you need to watch every day, but as your best practice, you might check every week what are things that are going to be archived. If you see a large number and that doesn't feel right, you can dig in and make sure it's appropriate. Okay, so those are the sorts of approaches that we take. So this is a little audit trail that we've got with our archiving, and it's letting us know what has been going on with archiving. So have we executed this in the last 10 days, 30 days, 60 days older? Last time it ran, what happened? So how many work orders were archived? How many activities were archived? And giving some data here. So this is letting us know that right now we have 2 activities coming up to be archived. Okay, so this is the sort of approach that we like to take, so there's no surprises. There's as much transparency for the user in P6 as possible so they can see what is going on. So let's just look at one that's run more than once so you can get the idea here. So this is letting us know what's gone on for this project that's already been going on for months possibly, because you can see here that we've got some that have archived over the last 60 days. Okay. So again, this is just a simple example of how this would work. And once this runs within 30 days, these activities would be removed. Okay. Now they can be removed and their logic will be removed. We can also do a dissolve on those if that makes more sense for your business. So lots of things that we can do to make sure when they are removed, they're removed in the most appropriate manner. Okay, that's one example. Now, let's go to another example of a little utility that we've built in P6-Calculator. So we have, again, quite a few clients that work with maintenance, operations, maintenance, ongoing work. And some of the clients want to understand what's going on with resources. Now, to dig into resources, you need to open either the resource assignment window or look here at resources. So what they wanted in this example was they wanted to see which resources were coming up in the next 30 days in this example. It could be set to whatever you wish. So give me the next 60, 90 days so I can get an idea of whether or not my resources are being used appropriately. Okay. So the way that this resource rollup would work is it's going to go and look at any activity that is coming up in the next 30 days. Now, in this case, they cannot be completed. So if this activity was finished, so I'm going to go ahead and complete that just so you can get an idea. It won't show those resources. It's only going to show the ones coming up. So in this case, it's 2 resources expected, P6 forecast and NJ. It won't go for any of these further out ones because it's looking just for the next 30 days. Okay. So I'll go ahead and run this. Now I'm going to run it manually. So I'm going to clear the resource last roll update. When I clear it out, it invokes for it to start running. Again, this is not something you necessarily have to have running automatically. It could run once a day. It could run once an hour, whatever makes sense again for your business. But since we're in a demo here, I'm going to try and get it to run right away. Okay, so just take a minute. We have quite a few utilities running on this database, and they run kind of one after the others. So it might take a second here for this to run. So again, this is food for thought, right? So in this case, this client, now they can see real quick here and they can do a search so they can see what resources are being used or have been assigned to work for the next 30 days so that they can do a filter. They can just search if they're looking for, do I have a contractor that I'm working with in the next 30 days? I do. Well, I know I need that contractor for something else, so I can give them some additional work. That's the sort of idea that they do with this. Okay, it's taking a minute. Let's just try one more time, and if it doesn't come up in a second, I'll move to the next example and we'll come back. So it could just be that it's behind a few others. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Okay, so now we've got the results. So it lets us know when it was run last. And it lets us know, in this case, the resources that are coming up. So that's what we expected. We expected anything on these, because I've grouped it by month, just so I could more or less get 30 days. It's not exactly 30 days, but it gives you the idea. And it did not pick up this resources because this activity is done. Okay, so that's another really quick win. So imagine if you have hundreds of projects and you're trying to find a resource and you don't want to have to open them all because it could be hundreds of thousands of work orders. So this can be a huge time saver, just this simple little utility that gets those resources up to the project level. Okay, so that's another little example of a utility that we've built for more than one client to give them a roll-up of some information based on a criteria. So in this case, it's based on a date range in this case. And this can be different for each project. Okay, so some projects that it may make more sense to look at 30, 90 days or 60 days. You can go ahead and do that. If you've got turnaround projects, you might want to look at just 1 week. Okay, so you can do what you want. It's very highly configurable for your scenario. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so another one that's pretty fun. So we have more than one client that have auto scheduling features that we've built in P6-Calculator that are similar to the job services, if you've ever used those. One of the job services you have available is for it to automatically schedule. Now, what we found though with job services is there's a weakness there in terms of making sure the data dates are consistent. So we've built our own auto scheduler and we've deployed it since I think version 8. So that's how long we've had that utility as part of P6-Calculator. So this would allow us to move the data date on any operational tasks every single night, okay? So that we essentially can have up-to-date scheduling every single day. Now, this is particularly interesting when you've got an integration. So you might receive your updates from your SAP, from Oracle Financials, that sort of thing every single day. And you might want your data date to move so that your updates are always consistent. Okay? We've done Discoverer, which is another small ERP. So we've done many different ones. But sometimes when you try to schedule, you'll find out that it didn't work. And so if it fails, we want to know why. And one of the main reasons that you might not be able to schedule your project is because of loops. So we built this utility so that, again, I can see very quickly at the project level that there could be a loop in this project. And so this gives us a flag. In this case, it's putting a flag up there, and it's also giving a message. So the message is letting us know how many loops we think there are, and I can go and dig in to those activities to try and fix the loops. Okay, so that's really what this tool does. So let me go ahead and open a project just to give you the idea of how this thing works. And let me go ahead to my loop layout. So we can essentially clean a few of these up so you can see how this thing can work. So we have loop information in the activity level as well. So we've got the stop sign and the yield signs letting us know where we think the beginning of the loop is. Now, loops can be a little tricky to detect, but we're trying to give the scheduler some starting point so they can go and take a look. And we're letting you know what we think is the loop and how many activities are involved in that loop. Now, of course, when I'm in P6, right, I could put the scheduling on and I can schedule and I can get this loop report as well, okay? But I have to open that, I have to schedule it, then I have to print this thing. So this may not be too intimidating, but I've seen people with hundreds of loops in their schedule. So that can be a bit intimidating. So this can be much easier to kind of work with as well. Okay, so you can kind of enhance what's already inside P6 with this. So in this case, the loop is pretty obvious what I did here so that we can clean those up. And I'm going to clean some of these up. Okay, so this should repair that loop. And I'll leave these other two just so you can see how this works. And then I will rerun the loop detector. So again, I'll just clear the date. I'll save that and refresh it. And then this thing should start to look at this project again. And hopefully it'll update this to 2 loops now and just give us the latest and greatest information on what's going on inside of there. Okay, so it looks like it ran on those 2. Let's see it run on this one. And of course, what you're trying to do is get it cleaned up. Oh, there it goes. It looks like it says there's 2 loops now, and the longest has 5 activities. Yeah. So again, I could keep working on this loop. Again, these are really obvious. They can be a lot less obvious if you've got a big schedule, but I'll go ahead and clean those out and then rerun it one more time. And I'm just going to plug a date in there. I think I probably was in the field and that's why it didn't fill it in. So let me try that one more time and see if it'll get us down to no loops and hopefully remove that. Okay. So again, you might think, well, I don't need that. I just do it inside P6 and that may be fine. But what we found is this can be quite handy especially if you're using auto scheduling. So we have lots of clients who do use auto scheduling. That way, especially after their integration runs, they auto schedule, which moves the data date, the percent completes then match to the data date. And then they're forecasting, in some cases, go out to automated reports so that they've got up-to-date data. Okay. Okay, so this is taking a little bit longer than I was hoping, but I think you get the idea. This should then say there's no more loops. Okay, it got rid of the stop sign, so that's good. Let's just see if it'll clear that message. Yeah, there we go. That's what we wanted to see. So it takes it off the stop sign, which you could filter, right? So you could just filter for the projects that had problems. No loops were found, which is good. So we know we're in the clear now on this project. Okay, so really handy, especially if you have a lot of schedulers, if you have a lot of projects. This just can really add some value, particularly if you've got integration and auto scheduling. Whether that's once a week, so quite a few of our clients have every night. Some of them just auto schedule once a week. And before they auto schedule, the senior schedulers just take a look to see if there's any loops that might have got missed by the schedulers, clear those out so that they can auto schedule, which usually also publishes out to some of their Power BI or Tableau reports as well. Okay, so that's another little example there. Now, you can see the next one is auto scheduling. So these kind of go hand in hand. So we usually do the loop detector first, and then we do the auto scheduling. Okay, so let's talk about what different ways you could use the auto scheduling. So when you have a lot of projects with different groups scheduling, you probably have a commitment for management to run reports on certain dates, okay? So let's just say it's every Friday, you're going to push out a standardized report across the group. Well, you know what can happen. Some schedulers aren't there. Some schedulers forget to update certain projects. Some schedulers update and forget to move the data date. I mean, you can have such a varied mixed bag of situations when you're dealing with a larger group. So this is partly why we built this auto scheduler. Again, this is something we've had going for a long time. And I can think of at least 10 clients that I know are using it. Okay, so it's something that has a lot of value, especially for larger groups with those commitments. So the idea here and how this works is you would say, we have a few fields that we use as our definition. So how often will you auto schedule? So this is an example of a day of the week. So you'd identify the day of the week that you want that auto scheduling to run. You would identify the certain time that you want it to run. And you would identify, sorry, let me say that more clearly. These are data date tags, okay? So this is setting the data date. This is setting when you run it, so that I'm a bit clearer. So this is saying that the data date will be Monday morning, every Monday morning at 8 a.m., but I'm going to run this on Wednesday, okay? So that is giving your schedulers a little bit of a buffer zone to get their updates in. So they have Monday and Tuesday to get their updates in, and then it will auto schedule on the Wednesday. Okay, so that's what this is defining. So from that, we would then be able to publish. Usually, we have many clients who run this in conjunction with our P6 reporter, which pushes a snapshot out into a reporting engine, which auto feeds reports. Okay, so if you find that getting all your reporting together can be very time consuming, this sort of thing could really make it much, much easier. Okay, so don't think there's a lot to show you above and beyond that, except just making it run, in which case it's just going to schedule, and that's how exciting this is. Maybe it's not the most interesting to watch, but it's giving you the idea of what you can do, because this can be very time consuming. And I know our clients who use this, the P6 admin saves a lot of time each week not having to make sure all of that is done. Okay, so much, much simpler to deal with that. And then if there's any failures or any problems, again, you can see there was a message there. So then they could fix those particular ones that had a failure and rerun the auto scheduling on an ad hoc basis if they need to. Okay. Okay, so another thing to show you is counting. So counting all sorts of things can be done with P6-Calculator. So counting resources, counting full-time equivalents, counting how many work orders we have in the project. Okay, so if you're in a turnaround project and you're integrated, let's say, to your EAM, you're going to be receiving work orders, work packages, work orders automatically. And typically, you have some idea of how many work orders you're going to have in that project. Okay, there's usually some target that you're working towards. Now, just having a running total of how many are in can be a huge win. It's not easy to do in P6. Yes, maybe you can pull it out to Excel and count it, but it's not easy to count certain things in P6. So counting inspections, counting work packages or drawing sets, all these sorts of things, counting whether you'd issued for construction or issued for bid, These things are not easy to do in P6. So P6-Calculator is a nice add-on to allow that. We count a lot of things for different clients. So some other things that come to mind are counting the number of permits that have been issued, counting the number of in-service dates that have been met for some of our electrical utilities. So counting all sorts of things is something that's right up P6-Calculator's street. So I'm going to run through just a simple example with counting work orders. Okay, so I'm going to open this project, and then we'll run through how it works. Let's just see. I don't want to use that one. Sorry, I opened the wrong one. Auto counting. Let's use one of these down here. Yeah, that'll be better. Actually, I'm going to use this one, the one below it, because I didn't run it on that one yet, so it's going to be a better example. Okay, so we're trying to count work orders. Let me go to my counting layout. I think it'll work better, which I have, and let me just filter down so I don't keep getting mixed up which project I'm on. That'll be better. Okay, that's better. Okay, perfect. So we're going to count work orders. So what we're going to see is we're going to see how many work orders there are, and we've also got a running list and just a little bit of feedback here to let you know whether there were any struggles with running that counter. So what it's doing in this case, and I will go to my counting layout so it'll be easier to understand. Okay, so we can count off of whatever field we're interested in counting. In this case, it's a user-defined field, but it could be a code. It could be counting off of a field that's got a certain status. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways we can count things. So essentially what it's doing, it's looking for all of these work order IDs, and it's going to count how many there are and list them. So to make it really simple, I'm just going to modify a few of these, and then I'm going to rerun this. Okay, but typically it would be a different WBS if you're receiving them from Maximo, for example, and whatnot. Okay, so I'm not going to use that number because that number is already in there. So I'm just going to use a totally different number. And then it's just going to give us each one of these, and it's going to put it out to this level. Okay, so let me just go ahead and say go and ask it to run it. Okay, so that's another way we do, we give the action to the scheduler to run it when they want. So this is when it's something that makes sense for it to be more ad hoc, not just something that runs in the evening. We would give you a field to set that. Okay, so that one went pretty quick. So it counted 6 work orders. It gave us the running list. And that can be super handy if I'm looking for a work order. So if you do, Control F and you're looking for a work order because you're not sure what project it's in, you can find it super easy. That can save you tons and tons of time right there. Okay, so that's just an example plus the statistics, and you can graph things and whatnot off of this level. Okay, so again, another simple little utility. Just we count so many different things for our clients. Okay, so this can be so helpful, save you hours and hours and hours of work, because you can certainly do it, but you might have to pull it out to Excel. Maybe you're going to try and run some global changes. All the different creative ideas that people come up with, which are fantastic, but they can be time consuming. So this sort of little utility can save you easily enough money to pay for using this utility because it's only a few $100 a month, depending on the size of your database. So it's not too expensive, and it can save you tons and tons of time. Okay, let me run through one more. Okay, so let's run through one more, and then I'll close up. And if there are any questions, if there's been something that you've been trying to do in P6 and you just haven't figured out how to do it, throw it in the questions and we can run through some. So another big one that we have used Calculator on is any of our clients that are using heavy resourcing, heavy costing in P6. So we've got to have quite a few clients. They're usually integrated. So clients that are integrating, it really makes it easy to get their costing into P6. So often they're integrated. And in this example, I'm going to touch on MultiCurrency. Okay? So this is a challenge inside of P6 because the multi-currency handling is not very strong. We get to set one currency conversion, which may not work, right? And you get to set whether a project is one currency, and that's about it. So we have lots of clients who purchase things in different currencies for one project, which with this allows us to roll up multiple currencies into one currency for the project. And you can even convert it out to a different currency for the overall database reporting. So lots of different things that you can do there. So let me just touch on one project. I'll open up one example, but I've got a few different ones here. So British pounds, US dollars, Filipino pesos, I mean, you name it, we can model it here. The currency for the project in this example, they were all Canadian. So we're trying to convert the different currencies into a ledger currency. So our corporate reporting is Canadian, but the projects are probably a British project, a US project, and a Filipino project. So what we're writing down is the base conversion, so the most common conversion rate. However, we don't have to have only one conversion rate because we can override on different activities and on different resources. So the calculator is very, very functional. We also have an example of a profit calculation, as well as an overhead base calculation in this example. So let's start at the project level. So what we're seeing here is that we have the estimate, and I'm just going to scroll over here. The estimate that we sold the project for. So this would probably be a contractor or an engineering example. So we sold the project for 35,000 British pounds, which is the equivalent of 58,000 Canadian dollars with the base exchange rate. Okay. Now, that was giving us an overhead and a profit of 7,000 pounds and 3,500 pounds. And again, we're getting that calculation automatically to show us in Canadian. So I'm not doing anything. The computer's doing it automatically for me, giving me all these calculations automatically. Now, as I mentioned, the base factor is 1.67. Now that, of course, can change over time. It could go up or it could go down. So I can change that and ask the computer to recalculate it. And you might be saying, well, that's not nearly good enough. Maybe I need more functionality. So we can do that at a deeper level as well. So we don't have to live with one base rate. We can have multiple different rates, okay? So we can do overrides on the activity level. We can do overrides on the resource level as well. So these values are down at the resource level. So we have our cell rate, our estimated cell. we have our estimated cost, we have our overhead and profit. So we're essentially emulating those same rolled up fields down at the lowest level. So all the calculations are really being done at the lowest level, which would be resources and expenses. And I'm in the expense side, but we have the same thing in the resource side. And you can see I've got this little bracket, and caret symbol inside of here. So that is how we automate the roll up. It's a symbol that we choose. It doesn't have to be that. It could be a different symbol. And that automatically, without any changing in programming, rolls up the values to fields at the activity level, at the WBS level, and at the project level. So this automatically will do tons and tons of calculations just through this naming convention that we've set up. So all of that will automatically happen. So this works so well, it saves tons and tons of effort for the schedulers or the cost control team to automatically get the values coming in. So let's say I needed to estimate a change order, and I had a new activity and I put it in, it would automatically do all the calculations just based on my cost. It would get the cell, it would get the overhead, the profit in both currencies all out automatically. Okay, so I just need to get from the estimating team the cost, and everything else will take place. Now, this gives the flexibility to also put in a different percentage if need be on there, okay? So again, super flexible. This is just a very quick overview of the sorts of things that we've done on costing. We've even allowed for rates to vary for different projects. So this is a big one. When you're a contractor, often where P6 falls down for you is that you might want different rates for every single one of your different projects. So we've accommodated that in P6 with different rates for every one of our projects. So this is project 11, project 22. So we're using rates that piggyback on top of the 5 rates available in P6. And we've got, as I was trying to explain to you, an override on the overhead and profits. So we could have different rates for each one of our resources, which is fantastic. And we can have different overheads and profits for each one of our resources and each one of our projects. So we've rolled out tons of simple, that very dynamic costing for a variety of clients. So it's really something that's can bring a lot of value, make your life a lot better, and do away with additional systems that you don't necessarily need if you look at this sort of methodology. Okay, so that was a quick overview. So I showed you quite a few different ideas here. I know it's probably a little bit head spinning and overwhelming, but that's P6-Calculator is such a powerful tool. So this was just a few ideas. I mentioned a few others. We've got percentage with different factors to roll up automatic costs. We've got calendar creations, automatic calendar creations for some of our clients, especially our rail clients, where they want to make sure everyone's off the track. So they get a time window when trains are coming through. They marry that with when the crew is there, and we give them unique calendars. So that's a really, really good one for road maintenance, for track maintenance. Those are the 2 main places we've used that. So work week tagging, automatic work week tagging, you name it, we've done quite a few things. I mentioned the field controller, field protection. I just didn't have time to show that. But if you have fields that you want to protect, we can protect them with P6-Calculator as well. So again, this is very much a food for thought kind of webinar. Okay, I don't see any questions, but certainly if you have any, feel free to chat them in or put them in the question area, and I'll try and tackle them. Now, let me just go to the wrap up. So I explained to you kind of how it works. I showed you a bunch of different scenarios that we've used. Let me go through a few of the feedbacks, benefits that some of our clients have found. So really the key thing here is that effort. Okay, so it reduces manual effort. You can automate a whole variety of things. So from codes, oh, another one that's probably could be of interest is some of our clients have activity codes that are unique to a project, but they want those to roll into a global code for their reporting. So that's another one that I need to try and get into a webinar as well. But that's another one. So that helps with your global reporting because you've got automations that join up coding, okay, without making the coding available for everyone. So that's another one that can be really great at efficiency and streamlining the data. Visibility. Okay, so we showed you sort of the loops. That's not a KPI per se, but this is an idea of being able to see something very, very quickly without having to dig to find it. And of course, that will benefit reporting. Your reporting is going to be much cleaner, much more consistent, and you can automate things that you may not have even entertained putting into P6 because you just didn't you couldn't figure out how you were going to deal with that data. Okay, so it really opens up the capabilities there. And then, you know, we have some clients that monitor field force and accidents, and they tag accidents on certain activities. Okay, so there's a variety of different ways that we use the data and automate different reporting. Okay, so really, really all sorts of different options there. Let me just see if I've missed any, and we'll wrap up. Okay, so I think I showed you that one, and I explained the FX rate. So in this case, the client is integrated to the ERP. So we're not only are we managing the estimate in multiple exchange rates, we're also managing the actual costs in multiple exchange rates. And it's a two-way integration to their ERP system. Okay, I think I touched on the work orders in the manufacturing. Now, this example is an interesting one because they would often forget to schedule. So this client actually had the automatic scheduling, automatic FX rate, and it would make sure that their percent completes would marry up to what was coming out of their ERP. And in this case, it was an old ERP system. So we've done many different ones. Let me just see. And I think I touched on archiving, so I think we're good for touching on some of the case studies. Well, hopefully you saw something of interest, and you can see that, you know, from the number of years of experience and the breadth of clients that we've worked with, and for the number of years, so 27 years, we have a lot of different scenarios where Calculator has fit the bill. And as I said, it's not that expensive a tool. We don't sell it per user. We sell it per thing that you're monitoring. So the packages range from a few $100s to maybe into the thousands, especially if you're deploying a lot of different parts to it. So that's per month. But if you think of the number of hours and costs that you save, you know, that's where you got to do the return on investment for your particular space. but we don't charge it per person. So it's not by the number of people in P6, it's by the number of utility pieces that you're running. So this is just one of our many, many P6 add-ons. You've probably seen some of our others, so certainly look at our upcoming webinar schedules. We've got our P6 QA tool, which uses a lot of the calculator components to help you quality check your schedule, P6 Scrubber to scrub out your XERs. We've got P6 Loader, which lets you push data in and out with Excel. We've got our updating tools, our caps and taps. So one's with barcodes and one is a web-based updating. So we've got a lot of different add-ons, and it's really because our clients want it to be able to get more out of their P6 system. That's why we've built these different tools. Okay, we've got another one called P6 Auditor, which lets you look at who's done what inside of P6. Okay, so that's particularly good for administrators to look at people who are moving, deleting, updating, that sort of thing. Okay, so definitely go look at our webinar schedule. We've got a lot of very useful tools to help make P6 work better for you. So again, I haven't seen any questions. That's okay. Either that means this was simple to understand, or maybe it was really, really head spinning like an owl. But certainly reach out to me. I think Donna has shared her email as well, and she's of course in the Philippines, so she may be closer to your time zone and easier to get in touch with, but certainly feel free to reach out to either one of us if you want to learn more, or if you want to have us follow up with you. I'll send one more poll question as well. If there is some follow-up that you do want done, just go ahead and let us know. And this just makes it easier for us to know how to stay in touch related to P6-Calculator with you. Okay, so we can you can fill that in, and that just helps us know how to follow up. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there. I'll stay on for another minute or two. If anyone comes up with some questions, I'll stay on to be able to answer those. And if something comes up after the webinar, that's good. Just reach out, send us an email, and we'll help work through how Calculator might work in your environment.